Too many people out there have a backwards mentality when it comes to daily life, but they think that their mentality is right because it relieves them. I've spoken about how self-defense is a trap. I've spoken about how even standing up for yourself and standing your ground can be a trap. About self-defense being a trap is very easy. When you put yourself in a fight mode, you have already weakened yourself to the violence of the other individual. In a fight mode, you cannot think clearly anymore. Your only goal is to take down the other to be left alone. So you don't think about the long-term consequences nor the long-term implications of what might come. Because during a physical fight, either one dies, one of the parties, or you injure the other for life by paralyzing them or whatever, or they paralyze you. And let's say both remain alive. One may file charges and the other is arrested. Even if the one that files charges was the one that initiated the fight, the one that initiated the fight may get a sentence also, but also you will get a sentence because you engaged in violence. If it happened publicly, you may also be charged with traumatizing uh, the masses and disrupting public order. And let's say that it's what is say self-defense. Someone came after you to hit you, and you knocked them out so hard they fell on concrete with their head, and they had a skull fracture and they died. Now, you did not intend to harm anyone, but it will haunt you for the rest of your life that you knocked someone out and they died. You'll have to process that for years. And some people can never process that at all. It begins to work negatively on their mind. And let's say now that the individual that you knocked out, whose head fell to the ground and died, let's say that he has relatives or she has relatives, because there are also women that attack. If it's a man and he has relatives who don't want to believe the official story, now you have people who don't want to come after you. Because let's say the judge says, okay, it's self-defense, you get no sentence, you're off. Others may blame you, and the fact they're blaming you may mean that in the future you may have someone knocking on your door for revenge. Maybe a son or maybe a daughter. And if it's a woman that came after you to attack you and you smacked her back and she died or she got severely wounded, even when people know that she was in the wrong, people will still blame you for hitting a woman. And now you'll have a social stigma on you, and now there are people that want to hit you or harm you because you've hit a woman. Not interested that the context was in your favor, that she was the one coming to violate you. So when it comes to it, people don't care about the truth, what really happened. People just don't want to be bothered by bad consequences. And if you were the target of negative attention and you ended up taking action on your own behalf, and as a result of that, harm befell the community, people will blame you for the harm that befell them, totally forgetting that you were the victim and you had no choice but to do what you had to do to keep yourself safe. Even when people do recognize that, okay, you didn't intend to knock that guy down or to cause this trouble, but hey, it was self-defense. Even when people agree with you, it's self-defense. Secretly, somewhere, people will be upset with you because now need to deal. The community needs to deal with the consequence of it. And in some cases, the courthouse may decide to jail you. You know why? Because when people are upset, they want vengeance. And if you're walking around freely, someone may take matters in their own hands. So the judge may decide, you know what? Even though it's self-defense and I stand behind you, I still will jail you. And the judge can do that according to law. So then you'll end up spending years behind bars. And after you've been released, you have a record, you can't get a job that easily, or if you had a wife and kids, or if you had something going for you or career, or that will be gone. So self-defense is a trap. And now, standing up for yourself can also be a trap. Let me tell you why. Let's say you have a teacher. It's a college setting or a high school setting. Now let's forget about high school. Let's say it's college, and you have this professor, this older woman, who thinks she can verbally abuse anyone. She's this extreme feminist type. And let's say there's a young lady, a student in the room who doesn't take this, who stands up for herself and says, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but not here. I don't like the way you talk to me like that. Okay? We're both adults here, so get in line." So everyone, all the other students thinking, whoa, that Lisa over there really nailed it. And people agree that Lisa is correct. The teacher should not talk like that to her. And let's say the teacher becomes upset, but later the teacher comes on because the teacher knows she's in the wrong. And they're witnesses. Now, there may be one female student in there who witnessed it and she's shocked. Why? Because at home, she had parents that were out of line and she was told to tolerate it or else. So she was walking on eggshells. She had narcissistic parents who never wanted to take responsibility. Now she grew up and she developed some of those tendencies herself that she doesn't want to face about herself. So she knew that the teacher is out of line, but based on her conditioning, she felt like she had to tolerate and take it because she had a higher position. That Lisa made plain, not over here. And even if mentally she will agree that Lisa is right, emotionally she'll be offended. Why? Because now she has to reflect on herself and realize that she's a coward. That she has been taking BS from her own parents way too long, and now she also has this tendency to dump on other people. She needs to face this about herself, and she doesn't want to face this. So instead of being upset with herself and therefore looking for solutions, she now becomes upset with Lisa, saying, "Who does Lisa think Lisa is?" Punk like that to a teacher. She's not respectful. And now she keeps on murmuring, complaining about how Lisa was disrespectful. She begins to treat Lisa in an angry way in public, and people thinking, what's wrong with this Karen? That Karen's treating Lisa that way. Eventually, Karen loses friends because some of Karen's friends think, hold on a minute, this bitterness goes way too far. That Lisa only made plain that the teacher's not allowed to talk to her like that. Even if she used cuss words, whatever, she's correct. So Karen's friends begin to realize, okay, this goes way out of line. And now she's losing uh, friends. And what will happen? One of those friends will even tell Karen, listen, Karen, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. The way you've been talking bad about Lisa, it's way out of line. You need to start looking at yourself. And what's going to happen? This Karen will blame Lisa for it because it's very easy for her to blame the other party who has nothing to do with her own defective behavior. So Lisa stood up for herself. The teacher calms down. Other people agreed with her. So Lisa thought it's all over. Well, it's not over because now you have a vengeful coward that seeks to take her life because that Karen doesn't want to live with the fact that even one of her own friends put her in her place. And she blames it all on Lisa. And now she wants to kill Lisa. But because she doesn't dare to do it, she has a boyfriend. That boyfriend is what they consider a bitter male in the world. And that boyfriend decides, you know what, that Lisa bothered you, I'm going to take care of it. So now Lisa has a defective male that wants to afflict her with violence. You see how this goes? So what Lisa could have done was walk out of the room and report that teacher, or I mean that professor, and things would have worked out differently. But in any case, Lisa now had violence coming after her because she stood up for herself. Because Lisa did not consider that there may be cowards there in the room and that cowards would take offense at her doing the right thing. Because cowards don't do the right thing. Lisa was a bit naive. And what if this teacher has a husband who is vengeful? The husband, when the husband hears his wife complaining about this student that put her in her place, the husband feel offended. Now the husband is after her. And there are a lot of cowards out there who want to harm you just because you do the right thing, because you don't take BS from others. That's why sometimes it's better to just tolerate BS and allow it to pass than to always stand up for yourself. Because when standing up for yourself, you may anger some people who are not used to doing the right thing. And such people, they will harbor bitterness against you for the rest of their lives because you force them to look at themselves. So, standing up for yourself is also a trap. But that's what the world is telling you. And let me tell you one thing. I've angered some people by doing that, standing up for myself. So I know what I'm talking about. People will become bitter against you, blame you, wish harm on you, pretend as if you are Satan himself. Why? All because you broke a cycle that they don't even want to face. I'm telling you. So, self defense and standing up for yourself are traps, but most people perceive them as the way to go. That's why I want to teach you the following, believer. Whatever situation you're in, reflect on your response or your reaction and imagine the worst possible scenario possible. If you are walking in the street and someone seeks to challenge you with a physical fight, they want to dump on you, you know that in the worst case scenario, either you die or you end up in jail or you end up losing everything you've established till now because society will blame you. So you just walk away from the situation. You de-escalate it. You don't put that other individual in their place. You don't confront them. Why? Because they're out of their mind. And once you confront them, they'll feel more pain, and now they will use that as an excuse to escalate. Check the situation also. Are they carrying a weapon, whether it's a gun or a knife or a stick? Because that means they're ready to harm anyone around. So if it's a boss that acts dumb towards you, but you don't have any other source of income, you would think, you know what, let me take this because or else I may be homeless because I can't pay rent. So even unbelievers, they examine the circumstance they're in to see what's the worst possible scenario. Now, I've spoken about self-defense and standing up for yourself, how those two can be um, traps, and most of the time they are traps. So I want to relate it to the spiritual now. In many of those spiritual warfare ministries, they tell you on how to fight demonic forces and all of that. And I'm telling you the following: overcome and shut down demonic forces. Don't fight them. When you have groups of people that are upset with you, don't fight them, bypass them, shut them down. Why? Because those people, they have made up their mind that they don't want the truth. They just want someone to blame so they don't have to look at themselves. So fighting them will only give them excuses to persist in their hatred against you. When you shut them down, there are two things they can do: repent, or they can persist in their violence and ruin themselves. And when they don't want to ruin themselves and they also want to repent, they have no choice but to flee. That will be the only third option, the option that they don't want to take. But once they've taken the third option by fleeing, they can never come back. Ever. Shut them down. Don't fight them. Let's look at what Christ said. Christ said that we ought to pay attention to the signs of the times. And Christ said the following: when you're on your way with your adversary to the courthouse, make sure you settle things with them before arriving at the courthouse. Because once you arrive at the courthouse, he may hand you over to the judge will hand you over to a warden, and the warden will hand you over to a prison. And Christ told you, you won't get out of there unless you pay the last penny. So Christ is telling you, when you see that the situation is escalating into worse, make sure you de-escalate and get out of it as soon as possible. Right? Because once it has escalated, people are going to look for someone to blame. And if people see that you could have just walked away out of the situation and it wouldn't have escalated, they will blame you. No matter how bad or blameworthy the other party is, it can be that you're not the aggressor at all. It can be that the other individual is the aggressor, that the other individual is the one using violence, and everyone is upset with the other party. They are. But for some reason, worldly people like this, society works like this, they want an easy way out. And putting the perpetrator behind bars is one thing, But even after putting the perpetrator behind bars, they don't want to deal with the fact that this has happened. So it can be that someone is hostile towards you, and you know what, you think, F you, I don't want to bother with this, you don't even think about it, you ignore the other individual, and what happens? The other individual escalates further and now causes a whole drama in the whole community. What has happened? People will be fed up with the perpetrator, but here's what happens. Your name is also in a bad negative daylight now because your name is now associated with their smear campaign. So people are going to think twice before getting involved with you. Why? Because they've been conditioned by the smear campaign to see you in a negative way. And later, this will be, how would I say, it will be a bad start and you're dealing with other people. So the moment any other individual became hostile towards you and you realize that this individual is just toxic, you should have go into prayer, decrees, and declarations and shut them down spiritually already. If you would have done that and that individual wouldn't be able to proceed, then the smear campaign wouldn't have happened and people would not have associated your name in a bad way. Because let me tell you, once people have associated your name as bad, it will never get out of their minds. Once people have placed you in a negative category based on lies or smear campaigns, they will always consider the option that you might be bad indeed. Why? Because the human mind works like that. We are shaped by our first encounters with something. If your first encounter with someone, let's say for example, let's say you grew up in a homogenous community, you barely had interactions with foreigners. Let's say your first encounter with a foreigner was bad. A foreigner tried to rob you. Now you know in your mind not all foreigners are going to rob you. But still, the fact that your first encounter with a foreigner was bad, that will shape how you relate to all other foreigners. That's why you have, for example, white supremacists that are so loyal to white supremacy. You know why? Their first imagery of black people was negative, or 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 the image was debased. Where did they get their first image of black folks? Through the media, where they often portrayed black people either in a position of servitude or as perpetrators of violence, or as criminals, or as thugs, or guys from niggas from the streets. So their first encounter with blacks, even though it was virtual, was negative. So all the other black people they will encounter, they will filter through that first experience. That's how the human mind operates. That is why it's best for you, as far as it depends on you, to remain at peace with everyone. And sometimes you tolerate BS from other people just so that things won't further escalate. Because I'm telling you, once perpetrators escalate and they dump their anger they have towards you on other people are harmed. And other people now have to deal with harm, both the victims as well as the relatives of the victim, as well as the environment needs to deal with harm that's done. If later the perpetrator mentions you as if you are to blame for it, of course people are going to think, don't mention Rashid's name. You're the one that attacked that guy. Rashid has nothing to do with it. But what has happened? The perpetrator has sown a seed of discontent towards you. Because in the context was as follows. The perpetrator harmed someone by violating someone else to be relieved. People are now upset. People want to know why, and which is natural. And the perpetrator mentions your name as if you are to blame. So the perpetrator made association between you and the harm they've committed, even though that association does not exist. But in the ears of the hearers, this connection is registered. And this registration they will carry with them. So next time there is some controversy about you, that connection is brought up. And because the connection they have in their mind with you is negative, and next time they encounter another thing in relationship with you that's also negative, not a smear campaign, they may tend to feel like indeed there's something wrong with you. Even if they have no evidence to back it up, they will feel like there's something wrong with you. And once they feel that, they will likely act upon it. And once they've acted upon it, they likely don't want to face that they were wrong. So now they'll become narcissistic against you and they will blame you, just like the first perpetrator did. So, what scripture makes plain that a good name is quite important. Even in the world, worldlings will tell you that having good reputation is quite important. Because reputation is everything in this world. If your reputation is good, people will likely not believe any bad news that is spread around you. But if your reputation is bad, it doesn't have to be your fault that you have a bad reputation. But if your reputation is bad, you will suffer harm because of it. People will far likely believe bad stuff about you. And even if you're proven innocent, they'll be so embarrassed that they believed bad about you that they will still blame you. You will still suffer psychic violence. There are people in jail, there are people in prison today who have proven to be innocent, but the reason the courthouses won't release them from prison is because to release them from prison, the courthouse will suffer a lot of reputation damage, and that will have other consequences in society. So that's why they remain behind bars, even if they're proven to be innocent. So don't think that facts will support you when you're targeted. There are many innocent people who ended up in prison or they ended up in worse positions. Some even were killed just because the environment did not want to deal with the truth. So that's why it's quite important. The moment you notice that something is escalating, de-escalate it with a smile or by pretending to be mentally ill or whatever you have to do, de-escalate so that the perpetrators uh, are psychologically shut down and exit the situation. Fighting is not worth it. When it comes to the fight of faith, so persisting in the faith despite demonic attacks, that's the fight that's worth it. All other fights are not worth it. I'm telling you. Even if you are right and you are proven to be right and people agree that you're right, eventually people will be upset with you. Because in every fight, there is someone that loses. And if the perpetrator loses, it's not just the perpetrator that loses, society loses also. Think about that. Whenever someone decides to fight you, to shut you down, and they lose, society has to deal with them losing. And if they don't want to accept that they've lost, that anger they have towards you, society will have to deal with it. And then people are going to think, why didn't Rashid just shut his mouth and walked away? Okay, he put this individual in his place, but now we're the ones that have to deal with the anger of this individual. Now the individual may harm one of us over here. So then society is going to blame you. And once society has blamed you, they will never take it back. They will even look for a fight with you just to justify the bad label they've given to you. Haven't you noticed that people who always stand up for themselves and always fight and win, that they're often not invited to parties? Have you noticed that people that don't take anything from anyone are often the least liked individuals around? Why? Because if you're known as a fighter, you're also known as someone that causes harm by going for your defense. And in any fight, there's someone that loses. And when the perpetrator loses, the community loses. It sounds very dumb, but society will prefer you being victimized and being quiet about it than for them to have to deal with the fact that there are perpetrators amongst them. They don't want to be conscious of it. The moment they are forced to be conscious of this, they will blame you and they'll be more upset with you than upset with the perpetrator. That's how it goes in this world. For example, let's say you have a guy who has a career and a female colleague lies that he sexually assaulted her. Let's say that right from the bat, people realize, okay, this can't be true because the date that you've mentioned he sexually assaulted you, he was on a business trip in China. So he couldn't have sexually assaulted you, and she's fired. In this case, the guy with a career did not suffer immediate reputation damage yet. But the fact alone that he attracted that type of negative attention is already going to put others on guard. Other male colleagues may think, you know what? I may not want to be around this Jeff that often. Why? Because Jeff almost lost his career and everything he had because some crazy woman wanted attention. Now, if Jeff attracts crazy women like this, then those crazy women will see me with Jeff, and they may decide to target me because they associate me with Jeff. So me associating with Jeff will also imply that the crazy women that want to take him down may divert their anger towards me. So now Jeff, in the long run, may lose business deals and his career may suffer. Look, you cannot prevent people from doing bad. You can't. They will do bad. Okay? But what you can do is shut down opportunities for doing bad. You can't prevent a thief from stealing because that's in their ability to steal. But what you can do is you can shut down opportunities for them to steal. So someone may want to steal your bike, but by you putting a lock on your bike, you shut down the opportunity for them to steal your bike. A burglar may want to break into your house. You can't prevent them from wanting to break in, and you can't prevent them from undertaking action to break in. But what you can do is you can put a defense around your house that makes it impossible for them to succeed. Look, am I saying that believers have to be careful? No, we shouldn't even be careful because we shouldn't have cares at all. We should be watchful. What I'm telling you, believer, is that you should assess every situation from a Christian point of view and always consider the worst possible scenario. And when you see the worst possible scenario, now you're able to decide what's best to do in that situation. As a believer, it's not meant for you to be overconfident in your responses just because you are a believer. Because even the good things you do can be framed in a bad way. Just realize that smear campaigns will exist till Christ returns, and the purpose of a smear campaign is to throw mud at you. Now, the people who conduct smear campaigns, you can't help that, but you can shut down any excuse they have to blame you. And in some cases, it's best for you just to leave a place, to leave a job, or to leave an area where you live. Look, I'm not telling you to keep on fleeing your whole life. I'm not telling you to look for another job just because people begin to talk bad about you. And now at a new job, the same thing happens. Telling you to look for another job again. I'm not telling you to go from job to job like a restless wanderer just because people are talking about you. No, absolutely not. Neither am I telling you to move every 2 months because you want to avoid contention. No, I'm not telling you to become a restless wanderer. What I'm telling you is assess the situation. So if you're about to move to, let's say, Paris, before you get the keys of your new flat where you're going to live, let's say weeks in advance, begin to pray, decree, and declare, and go into fasting so that when you take the keys in your hand and you live at the apartment, this will be at ease. By you doing that, you've anticipated a lot of violence that will come around you because you've covered the place where you live, and because of that, you'll live for months or years there at ease. But if you get excited, oh, I'm getting a room in Paris or a flat in Paris without any spiritual anticipation, you may take it, but because you haven't anticipated spiritually, there are dark clouds around there, and sooner or later one of those dark clouds may land on you. And once the dark cloud has landed on you, it may have irreversible consequences socially. But by you anticipating it, you've been ahead of all of that. So believers, learn to be ahead of things and learn to de-escalate before the fight is initiated. And please realize, the only fight that's worth it is the good fight of faith. That's why it's called the good fight. All other fights are not worth it in the long run. That's why even Christ said, when you see that something is escalating, de-escalate. If needed, concede a little and move away. It won't be worth it to win with the cost of being haunted by hundreds of perpetrators for the rest of your life. Now, don't get exquisite here. As a believer, you will face tribulation. So when you have breakthroughs, you will have demonic stalkers and narcissistic um, predators that will come to haunt you, to shut you down. So that will happen anyway. So tribulation is guaranteed as a believer during this lifetime. Persecution will come. But just because persecution will come does not mean that you should go through unnecessary trouble. You'll have persecution anyway. There's nothing you can do about that. So you don't have to pick up unnecessary fights and unnecessary enemies just because you have to prove a point. Because eventually it doesn't matter whether you're right or not. It matters what the consequences are. So that's why even some courthouses sometimes dismiss cases. Let's say you have a scam artist that has scammed for over $2 million for the past 10 years. And now, finally, the scam artist has been arrested. But let's say now that one of the victims realizes that, okay, I was scammed 4 years ago and I lost all my savings money. But how did I lose all my savings money? Because I lost my savings money because um, the scam artist sexually seduced me. And I was quite lonely at the time. Let's say now that this woman, who's the victim now, is married to a guy and she wants to work on her marriage. For her to continue with a court case means that all the facts of uh, her previous sexual involvement with this guy is going to come to the light. Also, how gullible she was. And let's say now that she is both married and she has a job now in a field where she is entrusted with financial information. If this court case continues, that um, all those things will come to the light, that she was, um, how would I say, she was codependent and therefore easily gullible, and that she even risked the financial data of others, not only herself. What do you think is going to happen to her current marriage? The new husband now has to deal with the fact that he's married to a woman that has codependency issues that are likely not going to be resolved. So the marriage is likely to suffer. Secondly, employers may think, you know what, maybe it's not that good to have this woman in this position because the bad reputation of that court case is going to haunt her. That means also going to haunt our company. And if it haunts our company, we may lose clients. And that means that we will lose financially. And when we lose financially, we'll end up having to fire some people. So her employer may look at the bigger picture and realize have this woman on the team may risk, it may bring the risk of losing financially, losing their reputation, and that will also cost some of the other employees who depend on their jobs to pay rent and to feed their families. So there's not only her reputation that's online, it's also the livelihood of many other people that work there. So the bosses may think, you know what, it's better to fire her. So she may lose her job, and that may also cause difficulties in her marriage. So in this case, the female victim of the scam artist may think, you know what, even though I was scammed, and I want to see him behind bars, I'm not going to proceed with this court case. Why? Because it will have too many consequences on my daily life. Even if he ends up behind bars for years, I'll be the one suffering bad consequences for years that cannot be reversed. And let's say the courthouse also sees that, okay, this man has scammed so many people for over $2 million. If all of this information comes out into the media, it's going to cause a lot of controversy in society. And all those controversies will lead to many bad consequences, a lot of division. Then the courthouse may decide, you know what? Let's make a deal with the accused. He doesn't have to go to trial. He will only get a fine. He will only be prevented from leaving the country and will leave at that. Or they're going to dismiss it altogether. Sometimes courthouses will dismiss cases, even homicide cases, if prosecuting them would bring too much trouble on the community. That's why when someone took advantage of you and you want to press charges, sometimes even the cops will tell you, "Are you sure you want to press charges? This may escalate, and you'll have to deal with it later on." And they're telling the truth. I'm telling you, even in the worldlings often decide, you know what, I'm done with this. Because if I persist in this fight, it will cost me way too much. Now, as believers, we should be far wiser than that. Anticipate everything, be ahead of everything, shut down violence before it even erupts, and de-escalate from a spiritual point of view, from your spirit position, de-escalate things as soon as possible, because the only fight that's worth it is the good fight of faith, going on despite persecution. All other fights are assets for Satan. So don't get involved in any other fight than the good fight of faith. Be at peace.